Welcome to Machine Shop Tech Talk. We always talk about the skills gap in manufacturing. It's a hot topic at most companies, but what really is lacking is leadership. If we have more strong people stepping up to lead and doing so for their people, putting them first, everybody wins. So, Kirk, I am so glad that you are here today. Let's dig into leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Arthur.
For those that are listening that aren't familiar with you, let's give like that 60-second summary.
Yeah, so I started actively in it when I was 16. My dad was a tool and die maker. My grandpa on both sides were tool and die makers. Pretty much every man in my family, this was what they did. And so I worked for my dad at 16 and, up through graduating high school and stuff like that. At 19, decided I didn't want to get cut and burnt every day anymore because we're running a lot of manual machines and stuff. I joined the Air Force and spent 6 years out there, and that's really where I learned a lot of stuff about leadership and dynamic environments and things like that, and realized I'm just good with numbers, and so came back into this, and 10, 11 years later, here we are.
Can you say a little bit about the role you're doing right now? Because it inspires me, dude. This is the kind of role where I get all lit up thinking about it.
Going back to those dynamic environments and especially in the military when, I worked with people from all over the world, all over the country, understanding those different features or facets of people, right? So right now I work for a company where we have 5 machine shops that I manage between Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. We have one in Kentucky, one in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then 3 in Indiana, 2 of them right outside Fort Wayne and one about an hour west of Indianapolis. And what's really interesting about this is every shop kind of has an add-on to the previous shop of capability and competence. We have on-site leaders at each shop. I don't like to call people managers because I don't feel like we should be managing people. We should manage production, right?
Yeah.
We have on-site leaders to lead people and make sure that we're all working together in things. So yeah, I mean that's really it. Is I kind of just oversee all that, and the other big function is business development that I'm really focused on. But business development and leadership go hand in hand, right? If you're not leading your people adequately and correctly, how do you develop your business? Because if you just keep making the same mistake over and over, you're not going to develop. You're not going to grow.
No, 100%, man. And it's clear the variety, like you were talking about, like that very different environment. You learned about navigating that in the Air Force, and you've brought that mindset back now. Which, I mean, when it comes to organized like military, the leadership in that is very strong. I mean, literally lives are on the line, so you develop a very strong sense not just of the responsibilities and the accountability you have as a leader, but also how to follow a leader. So you got exposed to a whole world that you're able to bring into the manufacturing sphere to support the leaders. I really love that you call them leaders at your companies versus managers, because yeah, they're managing production, but they're leading the people to obtain those goals for their own life, their own skill development, whatever that is. So my next question to you then is, leadership to a lot of people means different things. Some people might hear the word leader and they're like, oh, it's just the manager, it's just the boss, it's just the owner. But what does leadership mean to you?
I remember a very distinct time when I was going through leadership school, still in the Air Force, and we had a scenario that was this person X keeps having issues at work, and he's, this is the third time he's had something come up right before deployment, and how do you handle that? And I remember as 23-year-old me kind of still had that old school mentality, tough guy mentality, right? I was like, I'd yell at him and tell him how horrible he is, and you know what? That's it. I'm kicking you out. I see that as immaturity and emotional immaturity. So now looking at it with that additional life experience of, having a family, having kids, having done more things, it's like, hey, maybe you need to figure out what's going on with that guy. Maybe there's some coaching, some teaching you could do for him, right? To help him out. One thing about leading that I've learned is you don't always have to have the answer. You don't have to know everything to be an effective leader. You have to be able to steer people to the right conclusion and problem solve. And 90% of the time, they already know the answer. They just need you to help guide them to it and reaffirm them like, hey man, you know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And that to me, it's more of a coach. It's not telling people what to do. It's just guiding, being there to help and assist where you need to. Now, there are parts of my job where it's like, no, We're not going to go buy a $500,000 machine
Yeah.
because we just don't need it right now. Or no, we're not going to go spend $100,000 on tooling. Yeah, it would be great. Everybody would love to have that, but what's the ROI on all this stuff, you know? And that's kind of where I'll say the management aspect comes in, is that where you're more managing production and finances. On the personnel side, it's leading.
I like the balance because you've got those clear lines. Like, one, you're clear that you work with very smart people, so you're not here to tell them what to do. You're here to help them either remember because they already know, or for them to ask the right questions, maybe to help guide them on that path. But then
Exactly.
also you still have those lines, you still have those rules, like you have the guidelines that, like, okay, yeah, that would be a nice toy to buy. Yeah, $500,000 machine. I would like to have a new $500,000 machine. I'm sure you would too. But it's like, if it doesn't make good sense, yes, okay, you can acknowledge, hey, yeah, I get you want that. That's not where we're at right now. Whatever you do, I really like the view that you pull to leadership. It's not about telling, and I think that's really the divide right now that we see in manufacturing, is there's people that feel like the only way they can manage others is to tell them what to do, tell them what not to do. Like the example from the Air Force where you were younger and you just wanted to scream at this guy that's not showing up. And now, because you're wise, now you can just, hey man, like, you're constantly late. Like, what's going on? Maybe they got something going on at home. I mean, really quick interjection. I had a time when I started, and it was the first shop I started programming and leading in. I almost didn't make it through my first 3 months because in the first 3 months I had a relationship that was extremely terrible, and I had all these things going on, and my manager, rather than just being like, look man, you're not making it past probation, he sat me down and he asked, what's going on? You're a really smart guy, something's off. And I shared, and he's like, okay, he's like, I'll give you 3 more months, and boom, and I ended up running that shop and managing the crew. So, but it's leaders like that, like yourself, that make that possible. He could have just come down on me like a hard ass and I would have been gone, and maybe I wouldn't be in manufacturing right now.
No, it's exactly it. And I coach youth soccer as well. My daughter plays,
Yeah.
and when you look at coaching youth sports, it's not just about teaching kids how to play the game. You're there to also try and make an impact on these kids' lives. You know, it's more than just teaching the game. It's you're a teacher of a million other things because these kids all look up to you, and it's the same exact model when you come
Mm-hmm.
into the workplace. There's a certain level where people maybe stop looking up to you so much, you know. But if
Yeah.
I bring in a kid straight out of tech school or something, I have to know he's looking up to me and like this guy knows
Yeah.
what he's doing, right? And so your interactions with them absolutely shape the future of them, their path forward. Yeah, it's a huge deal.
You're not the first person to mention the coaching either on sports. I had Jason Roth on from Autodesk. I don't know why my brain dropped that, but I had him on, and he's been coaching football for 25 years. And that was one of the things he shared working with students, because he works a lot with education. That's his niche. But it's kind of like what you're talking about. Like, you take that opportunity to coach, to mentor, to support these young humans, whether it's people on the field or, like you said, the people coming fresh out of trade school. Especially when you've got new people on the shop floor, you want to do everything you can to support them and discover it, because for a lot of them it's going to be the first time working in a shop and they don't know what to expect.
I had a kid once that we brought in, and I always try and create a good working environment. And there's always jokes going back and forth between guys. As long as it's tasteful, I'm okay with it. And he would come in, and I watched him one time, turn his wrench to the left to tighten it. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm tightening this bolt." I said, "Not even close. You're going the wrong way." And of course, the guys gave him all sorts of hell for it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that is the truth. I mean, there are kids that come in, they want to do it. It's interesting to them, extremely interesting. But that mechanical ability and things is kind of something that's lacked over the years. So then on the other side, you've got to make sure that your older guys in there aren't harping on these kids and then crushing their confidence.
And that's a great point, right? Because I know you and I have talked about the need for youth in manufacturing, and it's twofold, right? You've got to coach and mentor the youth coming in to understand how hard it can be to learn a new skill or to apply that skill that maybe you've been studying in school for 6 months, couple years, whatever the program they come from. But also, like you just pointed to, talk to the senior people you have on your shop floor and be like, look, these are new kids. They're going to do some stupid stuff. And as much as you want to laugh and ridicule you've got to find, like you yourself did, that wiser path, the one that's actually going to help them. So you're creating, as a leader, you're creating other leaders on your shop floor and across all of these companies to make the transition. And I think that's something for any of the listeners out there. Like, if you're listening, looking for insights for leadership, don't skip on this one. It's multifaceted. You can't just coach part of the workforce. You got to coach the whole team.
Yeah, and I'll give you one interesting statistic that this is not anything that I researched, or this is strictly a social experiment I did on my own LinkedIn. Okay.
Okay.
So I, make various posts throughout the years of different process improvement ideas and tooling comparisons, tool holders, things like that. In the last couple of weeks, I've made a couple of posts regarding leadership. 10% of the interactions that I would get from a process focused post, right? So that shows me, and now, a lot of it has to do with followers and things like that. The people that I connect with are frequently programmers and things like that. But those are the people that this leadership thing really applies to. I have probably had more negative interaction with programmers as a machinist than almost anybody else. That, to me, when I kind of saw that, I was like, wow, that shows me that, really, so everybody is always trying to improve their process, trying to get that cutting edge, the leg up or whatever. But at the same time, if you put that same effort into leadership, your people will give you that leg up. And so, that was interesting to me.
It is really interesting because the thing is, it's easy. Like, as a machinist, I got into machining because I didn't want to deal with people, okay? Way back, I was like, I just finished 4 years in customer service. I started working in high school, and I was like, man, I am so done with people. So I went into machining because I was like, look, I can talk to the machine. I can talk numbers all day. I don't have to deal. But the reality is quite the opposite in manufacturing, especially now as we're trying to reshore more stuff. So I'm going to put it to you. Who needs to step into leadership within a manufacturing company? Like, are we only talking the typical hierarchical managers and owners, or where do you see the leadership needs to come from?
I think actually from the military, one of my commanders told us, and it was lead, follow, or get out of the way. And that was one thing that really stuck with me, right? You've got leaders, you've got followers, and if you're not willing to do either, you're just going to be a roadblock. So that being said, when you think about sports again, we can't have a team full of quarterbacks, right?
No.
We can't have a team full of wide receivers. They just get ran right over by, the defensive line and stuff. It's important that the structure is there. So I don't necessarily want to say that, everybody gets to be a leader, but they can be in sort. You can be a leader of your cell. You can be a leader of you are the leader of your machine. You're putting your tools in and things like that, right? There's degrees of leadership, I would say. One of the things in this trade that's always happened is somebody gets, the keys to something. They have ownership of it and they hold it. I don't want anybody else to learn this because I could be put out of a job. A lot of leaders also use the phrase, if you want it done right, do it yourself, which is horrible. If you want it done right, train somebody to do it. Train them correctly. The point is, like in the military, you always were ready to do the job above you. If something ever happened to this guy, you step up and you do it. And I, try to employ that same principle here where I'm training the guys under me to do my job. Because there's another phrase of only do what only you can do. I'm not going in there, I'm not touching tools off. That's not my thing. And it's not that I'm above doing that, because I love making stuff. But that's not what I'm here for. That's not my duty, if you will. So what I'm always trying to do is I'm trying to take people and give them as much as they can possibly handle. If they're showing like, hey man, I'm bored, I need more to do. All right, well, hey, let me teach you some more stuff so you can take more of this off me. Now I can go start working or focusing harder on the things I need to focus on. And so that's really what it is it's an upstream and a downstream information exchange, because leaders have to also be followers. And there's a lot of times that I'm following the people underneath me based on their suggestions, their input. You and I talked about this before about, being young in our careers and having good ideas and people just saying, you're too young to have a good idea. You don't know anything. And just really how damaging that is. Had I not been such a stubborn human, I may have just said, you know what, whatever, I'm just gonna sit here and push a button for the rest of my life.
Well,
So
cheers to being stubborn,
yes,
dude.
absolutely.
Because I think it's also my stubbornness that had me stick it out. Because, like you said,
Yeah.
I heard it a lot in the beginning of my career, especially when I was running a shop at 24 and everyone under me is 40 or older. I had to be stubborn AF, right? Like, I had to be
Yeah,
super stubborn. But
absolutely.
there's a couple of really nice things that you were saying there. Like, even if we look at the analogy of leadership on the football field, because a lot of the listeners are going to be familiar with like North American football. If you're on the line and the QB's sorting out a play and you got a wide receiver that's like, dude, no, I got this. Like, get it to me. They'll modify the play because the QB in that situation will be like, look, okay, I'm going to let you take the lead on this. I'm going to trust you. And it's a lot of that on the shop floor. Like when you were talking about CAD CAM guys, they have opportunities to either follow or lead. I really liked what you said about that. Like, choose one or the other. I feel anyway, you can disagree if you like, but that it's situationally. Like you were saying, some situations you're following the guys on the floor. Like if they've got expertise on this product and you're scratching your head, man, why aren't we hitting these numbers? And they're like, oh, actually, boss, if we do this, I think we can do it. Maybe it's not a $500,000 machine, right? But maybe
Right.
it's a different strategy, or spend a couple hours reordering the program or the operations in the program. That's a moment where those people are actually stepping into a leadership role. They're taking the lead in that engagement, in that interaction. Okay,
Yep.
you're nodding, so maybe you agree.
No, I agree 100%, and I'll give you a great example. When
Yes,
I came
please.
into Mars Manufacturing, this industry, the textile braiding industry, I mean, these machines are ancient. I mean, hundreds of years old, and there's no data on these anywhere. There's no drawings, there's no models, there's no nothing. We have a guy there that's been there 10 years. I'm not too proud to come in and say, I don't know what any of this stuff is. You do. You help me. How do we do this? How have you guys done this in the past? I take that input and then I take
Mhm.
my experiences and I say, okay, look, this is how we've done it in the past. I want you, and it's never coming from a place of this is how you're going to do it from now on for the rest,
No.
forever. I want you to try this because I think this will make it faster. I think this will make it better.
Yeah.
And then we do that a few times, and now it's like the trust is built there. So now when I come out and say, hey, I want you to do this, we don't even have to talk about it. He's like, yeah, I'm sure you're doing it because it's going to be better. It's going to make my life easier or make parts faster, whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's always, anytime I go into one of these new shops, that's the first thing I do is I just go talk to people and say, what do you think could be done better? Because I'm coming in blind. You know,
Hmm.
I don't know. What do we do? What can be done better? What can I give you support wise to make your job easier? That's really what it is to me. Is I'm just here to plug
Yeah.
holes, and
Yeah.
that's to me what a leader should be is just plugging the holes, filling the deficiencies.
That's a lot of great tips for the people listening in that are looking to step into a leadership role. So, do you have any other tips that you might offer to those potential leaders, whether they realize they're leaders right now, but they're listening in? Do you have any other tips for them?
Yeah, so I mean, I think all this can really be summed up in the golden rule, man. You just treat others how you want to be treated. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nothing overly complicated or complex about this. One of the biggest areas to me, you have to be so solid in what you think, what you believe, what you say. If you question yourself, somebody else is also going to question you because people can pick up on that. One of the things about me, I don't say anything unless I'm like 98% sure that what I'm saying is accurate. So I think that's extremely important. And not only that, but because when we talk about leading, we're always thinking about leading down, but you're also leading up, just like the guys on the
Mm-hmm.
floor, right? So if our CEO, Mike, if he comes to me and says, I think this is a good idea, you've got to have the backbone and the conviction to say, no, and here's why. Or, yes, that's a great idea, and here's why. Two, the why, that's a big part to me, is a lot of times you have a problem, somebody will come to the floor and say, do this. Why? Nobody learns anything by saying, do this. Do this because, teach them. Now they don't have to ask that question again. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him forever, right? So give him the answer and let
Exactly.
him never have that problem again. I would say that's number two. The biggest point that I would like to make is, like I told you, we've got a ton of people out there appealing to the young kids, getting them in. Titan, there's a couple educators that are working with Titan that I follow on LinkedIn that are trying to bring awareness to the trade and get them in, right? So
Yeah.
that's ground level. We've got a ton of people Paul Van Meter. There's a few others out there, Mike Payne, that are talking to and advocating directly towards the top owners, senior management, senior leadership, those kind of CEO, COO, CFO, those kind of things. There's nobody here. There's a lot less people right here talking about this. The thing is, you got the guys advocating, they get these people in. The people in the middle, they keep them in.
Yeah.
And without these people in the middle keeping them in, what we're talking about to up here means nothing, right? Because if you don't have people, how are you making a product? You know what I mean? So that's the biggest thing to me is like, I just can't stress enough how important this stuff is for the success, not only of individual shops, but as American manufacturing, and we'll call it North American manufacturing. So,
Yep.
we're including all the countries here, Arthur. But, as a whole, I think it's insanely important. And I think that, with the way things have changed, when I started and probably when you started on a lot of manual machines, there's a lot of old school thinking with the CAD CAM coming in and the CNC machines coming in. A lot of that thinking has shifted, and I think it's going to continue to shift, but I think we got to shift it faster. I think we got to put a lot more emphasis on this.
I think that's a lot of great tips. So make sure you guys are keeping track of that. Feel free to jump back and listen to it again so you don't miss anything, right? There's a lot of benefit, like you said, working in the middle, talking about leadership, the responsibilities of everyone in the company, not just bringing people in, but doing the work necessary. And I think leadership is really that crucial element that's going to keep the youth in as we're going, being humble, being willing to learn, even from the newest person on your shop floor. The other one is, and we've hinted at it through the whole conversation, you've talked about, listening to the guys on the floor when they give you feedback or going to them and asking them to try. All of that is hinged on trust. Accepting that you need to be able to trust people, accept the fact that sometimes you're going to trust and it's not going to work out, and you still have to be able to trust again. Because if you get bitter, right, like we talked about our stubbornness, if we would have just got bitter and walked off, we wouldn't be where we are right now. We wouldn't be in the position to even have this conversation. So there's the being able to trust, and then trust again if that person lets you down, doing what you need to do to facilitate the trust, the environment of respect.
Yeah. And, one of the big things about getting kids in is they go to their trade schools or tech schools, whatever, and they're working with these educators that are very passionate and they're pushing these kids, but the kids are engaged because they're learning. When they get to their first shop, it's a lot of times go stand over there in that corner and push that green button. When it's time to go home, you can stop pushing that green button, right?
Yeah.
So it's important for leaders to continue to be energetic and encouraging, but also keep them learning. And, you say, keep spindles turning and earning. We need to keep their minds turning and learning.
Oh, 100%. I really like that.
It's equally as important to put into your people as it is to put into your process, because you get a bunch of really smart people putting into your process. You're going to develop a really good one really quick, right?
Exactly. And it encompasses all of the aspects of leadership that we've discussed in this episode. I think that's a beautiful point to finish our conversation on here today, is look at ways you can bring the youth in, look at ways you can build up your leaders on the shop floor to keep youth in manufacturing so we don't push them out of the companies. And part of that, I definitely think, is going to be keeping their minds engaged and keep them learning. It's something I've been passionate about. It's something I talk about a lot, is continuous learning and continuous growth and development. All of that stuff. That's the shift we need to see. And I know you're creating that for the group of companies that you manage. I know Mike is highly encouraging of that. He did a great selection choosing you to be that man in that role for the companies. So thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you're still listening right now, I know you like this conversation. Make sure you drop a like, a follow, turn on that bell, and I'm going to link contact details for Kirk below, whichever ones he tells me, so you know it's okay to contact him that way. Follow him on LinkedIn. He has great content out there, and you can follow along this journey as him and Mike work together to grow the leadership on the manufacturing front. And to all my machinist friends out there, keep your spindles turning and earning.